Right, apologise for that. Right, back to where we were. Share screen. Oh. Now I'm struggling to, great, I'm recording while I can't share my screen. Okay, here we go. Right, and share. Right, and here we go. Right, let's go back to where we were. Right, okay, apologies for that. So we are now recording, so you will be able to watch this again if you need to. So we were talking about different types of hypnotic inductions, which you're going to be continuing with this week, some tomorrow night. And you've also got the option to go to Heather's session on the Friday morning now between 10 and 12, Heather, is that correct?
Yep, 10 and 12.
Absolutely, brilliant. So we started to look at how to induce hypnosis and how to deepen that and how to release. So all the basics really. And we can talk a little bit more about your reflective practice journals more next week if you have questions about that. And then also understanding some of the contraindications around use of hypnosis. So who we can work with, who we can't. Okay. So what we're actually going to do today is we're going to look at, starting off really looking at what hypnosis is and what it's not. First of all, I mean, if I can just open that out to you, how would you describe hypnosis, your understanding? Obviously, you're all here, the fact that you're interested in hypnosis and hypnotherapy. How would you describe that? Anybody volunteer?
Tapping into the subconscious.
Tapping into the subconscious, absolutely. That's definitely something we're doing. Anybody else?
Oh, I was pretty much going to say that yeah, working with someone while they're in a theta brainwave state.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All of these things are not wrong. They're all part of it. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else want to offer anything else out there of their understanding of hypnosis? No. Okay.
Being in a relaxed state.
Sorry. Who was that?
Me.
Sorry. What did you say? I missed
Is
that.
it being in a relaxed state?
Yes, sometimes it is about being in a relaxed state. I mean, it does tend to be when we're working with them, but it's not always the case. But it is tend to be what we associate with it.
Like suggestive therapy in a way.
Suggestive therapy, yeah. Obviously, that we're more open to suggestion, or we can be. So there's lots of reasons sometimes why we're not. Okay, so there's a few ideas out there as to what it is. I've got a few definitions here because there's lots of varying definitions here, and not all of them are necessarily what we would like to tell our clients or believe that it really is. You know, that this particular one here, this is by the Collins English Dictionary, believes that hypnosis is an artificially induced state of relaxation and concentration in which deeper parts of the mind become more accessible, used clinically to reduce reactions to pain, to encourage free association, etc. What do all of you think about that one? Any issues with that one?
It's not what you say to a client.
No,
it's not artificially induced.
Absolutely.
Is it?
Yeah, no, it's something that we can all achieve at any time and do. You know, we regularly are in a state of trance, even when we don't know we are. If you think about when you're driving home from work, you're not consciously necessarily doing that because your body knows how to do it. It's just doing it. You know, how often have you got somewhere and just thought, oh, I didn't even remember doing that? You know, you just did it. So it is a very natural state of mind, if you like. It is a very focused, concentrated state of mind. So I'd agree with that. And definitely we are generally accessing the deeper parts or the subconscious part of the mind and the conscious. They do become more accessible in the right conditions. So there are times when we're not able to access that as easily. So yeah, and free association is something that sometimes we may use to, you know, as part of that process. Let's have a look at another one. Right, how about this one here? So a trance-like state resembling sleep, usually induced by a therapist by focusing the subject's attention that heightens the subject's receptivity to suggestion. The uses of hypnosis in medicine and psychology include recovering repressed memories, modifying or eliminating undesirable behavior such as smoking, and treating certain chronic disorders such as anxiety. Anybody got any views on that one?
I think it's quite good, but it's not necessarily sleep.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to be in a state of sleep. As I say, we are quite often doing things in a trance, and you don't have to necessarily even have your eyes closed. I don't think I've ever worked with a client that hasn't, but I know there'll be people that have. So yeah, it isn't necessarily sleep. Induced by sometimes, I mean, it is an induction, but I guess it's something that the client, you know, something I always say to clients, this is something that I'm helping you to do. It's not something I'm doing. I'm not controlling you. It's not something we do to control our client. We're helping them to take back control. And I do feel the word induced almost sounds like, I don't know, it sounds a little bit more controlling, but maybe that's me. So definitely focusing the attention. It is where it's a very highly focused and usually a relaxed state, but again, it isn't always. And recovering repressed memories, yes, it can do that, but it isn't primarily what we're doing. And again, eliminating undesirable behavior. Unfortunately, they always put smoking in there, and it just, so many people just associate hypnosis with giving up smoking, and there's so much more to it than that. So there's a lot of good things about that definition, but some things that I would say maybe a little bit misleading. Okay, this one here, this is the Oxford Dictionary. The induction of a state of consciousness in which a person apparently loses the power of voluntary action and is highly responsive to suggestion or direction. Its use in therapy typically to recover suppressed memories or to allow modification of behaviour. It has been revised, but is still controversial. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was quite interested in.
Sorry. Who was that? Sorry, I missed that one.
Sorry, I was
say, sorry, do you want to go, Rue?
Yeah, okay. I was thinking about that whole sense of agency that people can have even whilst they're under hypnosis.
Yeah.
That you can actually. So the first time I was ever hypnotized, someone took me down an Alice in Wonderland tunnel, and I hate Alice in Wonderland. So I shifted it to something less distressing for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there is a sense that you're not completely under someone else's power, are you? Because you have that agency, and that's vital, I think, for people to know.
Under their power at all.
No, no.
I think I have a lot of issue with that sentence, that loses the power of voluntary action, because that's not.
We all got magic wands at the end of module 15, though, Debbie. So. were you not supposed to get those?
Yeah. So, but
Sorry, I'm practicing my inner introvert, so I shall be quiet.
Oh no, please do. Speak up. That's what it's all about. It's meant to be interactive. But losing voluntary action, I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of when they come to see you. Sometimes people will come and they're really nervous. You know, if you've got a very anxious person and they feel that somehow they're going to, they're going to lose control. And I always try and turn that around and say, no, actually, I'm helping you to take back control. That's not what this is about. You won't do anything you don't want to do. But unfortunately, stage shows give the impression that it's all about making people do stuff that they don't want to do, or didn't think they could. So I found that sentence quite a worrying one. Apparently loses the power of voluntary action. Highly responsive to suggestion and direction. Yes, again, that's what we're aiming for. There are things that get in the way of that, which we can talk about later on. And typically used to recover suppressed memories. Again, not necessarily suppressed or repressed, but maybe just not significant or hasn't felt to be significant. So often I'll have a client that'll go to a memory and they'll just say, oh, I have no idea why I went there. But there's a reason for that. It isn't a major event necessarily, but it's the feelings behind that event. And then of course the fact that it's been revived, I'm not sure it ever stopped, and still controversial. So not the best of definitions to give your clients, I guess. Okay. Hypnosis is a state of mind enhanced by, although not exclusively, mental and physical relaxation in which our subconscious is able to communicate with our conscious. Sorry about that. I've gone backwards. Oh, I need to go back. Sorry about that. It won't go back. There you are. There you go. Hypnosis is a state of mind. Sorry, I'll say that one again. Enhanced by, although not exclusively, mental and physical relaxation in which our subconscious is able to communicate with our conscious mind. That's the general hypnotherapy register. How's everybody feel about that one?
Isn't our subconscious able to communicate with our conscious mind regardless?
I guess you could say that. Yeah, I mean, it does put you in a position where you're able to do that more freely, more easily as well. I think overall there's nothing too much wrong with that particular quotation. And anybody else got any other things they've got to say about that one? It says it fairly succinctly that it is sometimes physical relaxation, but it doesn't have to be. And the idea is that the subconscious is more easily able to communicate with the conscious. And that's what we're aiming for. So I don't think that's such a bad one. This one here, I know Andrew's quite fond of this one. Big fan of Dave Ellman. Hypnosis is a state of mind in which the critical faculty of the human is bypassed and selective thinking is established. Now, some of you might not know what the critical faculty is at this moment. Anybody got any thoughts on that one?
Is critical faculty the belief system?
The critical faculty is what is like a combination of that sort of what we'll come to in a moment as the inner librarian. So, our mind and our emotions, and that will actually stop us accepting something. So the critical faculty, we try and bypass that critical faculty in order to help somebody change their behavior and give them more positive suggestions.
What would be a synonym of critical faculty?
A synonym, I suppose, would be a door or a barrier.
Okay.
It's a barrier.
Okay.
Really.
It's not what Andrew referred to as the monkey mind, is it?
It
monkey.
relates to that.
The
We'll come to that today. Yeah.
Okay.
It does relate to the monkey mind getting in the way.
Okay.
Yeah. So so absolutely right. Okay. So that one is quite a reasonable one. And this is Andrew's one that he uses. And hypnosis is a naturally occurring state of mind that can also be induced at will, either by oneself or with the help of another, in which both the conscious and the unconscious mind may become more suggestible, and information in both the conscious and the unconscious mind may be more accessible and open to influence and change. Okay. So that's I guess the definition that we would mainly go with. As part of your coursework, you'll be asked to write your own definition. So as a combination of all the different definitions that you can get out there, and what you sort of believe and what you learn about it, you will form your own phrase. But that is a good one. It is a naturally occurring state of mind. It's something that's innate within us all, and it's something we do all the time. So there's nothing artificial about it. It is something that you can induce at will, yourself or with somebody else. And there are certain writers out there, people like Roy Hunter, which will tell you all hypnosis is self-hypnosis anyway. And it is really, it's we're just helping them to get to that state. And it is a communication between the conscious and the unconscious mind, in aiming to get to the point where it's more suggestible so that they can change their behavior and change their life in the way that they want to. So I think that's quite a nice rounded definition, but you will be thinking of your own definitions, as I said, as part of your coursework. So take some of those, but do look at others as well, and see what you get from that. Okay, so any questions around hypnosis in terms of what you believe it is? Has anybody got any other different opinions or heard any other things that they think would be helpful? No? All happy with those? Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, as I said, we're going to talk about models of the mind. And we're going to start off with something called the pyramid model, which I'll come to in a moment, but I've put this particular one up here because this is very much almost what the pyramid model is a simpler version of. This is Freud's conception of the human psyche, and it's the iceberg metaphor that you may have heard of. So sort of implying that our conscious mind is literally at the tip of the iceberg. It's a very small part of what's going on in our mind. Obviously his gets a little bit more complicated. Starts talking about the pre-conscious, the superego, the unconscious, and the id. See a lot of that stuff in stories back in the 19th century, with Freud being around, obviously. But the pyramid model is a much simpler version of this, if you like, which is something you can use to help explain to your clients how you can help them and how, you know, where some of their issues come from. This, as I said, this has got a lot of detail, and if you really talked around this, you go into a lot more detail than perhaps your client really needs to know. But the pyramid model is a way of helping you to explain a little bit about how the mind works in quite a simplistic way, and also how hypnotherapy then in turn will be able to help them. So let's just move on to look at that. Now there's a couple of different versions of this, and they get slightly not complicated but just more detailed as we go. Okay, so we've got the pyramid model here. So you can see the similar formula. It's a pyramid instead of an iceberg, so same basic shape. And the idea again is at the tip of that pyramid is our conscious mind. And you can see the two arrows there. So you've got information coming out of the subconscious into the conscious sometimes, and you've got information that comes in going down into the subconscious. And the reason this is so helpful to us is really that part of our job as hypnotherapists is to really understand how life has kind of hypnotized people in the first place to believe what they believe. It's all about limiting beliefs, and people have these beliefs, and then sometimes that creates issues, problems, illnesses, and then it attracts sometimes repeating cycles, repeating patterns. And what we're trying to do is to help them stop doing that. So using this kind of simple model, it's a way of explaining what happens to all the information, the emotions and things that they experience through their life. So the idea is that you've got all this information coming in, and at the top of the the pyramid, you've literally got the conscious mind, which really can't hold on to an enormous amount of information at all. It's thought possibly 3 or 4 pieces of information at a time. Some say women can hold on to more. I'm sure we'd all like to believe so. But when you think about when you're trying to resolve an issue for yourself, or even if you're working with another therapist, if you're just using your conscious mind, it's very limited. All that other information is stored somewhere, and something we can do is help people to access that. So just looking at a slightly more sort of detailed model of that. So if you look at the pyramid now, you've got the conscious mind here at the top, and on a daily basis, hourly, minutes, whatever, we've got information coming in, good information, bad information, events, things that make us happy, things that make us sad, and they're all coming in all of the time. And the idea is that that's got to go somewhere. So what we tend to do is we tend to store a lot of that stuff in the subconscious. So even when we learn something, if you think about when you learn to drive, we very rarely think about exactly what we're doing. Our subconscious and our body knows what to do. If we're eating with a knife and fork, we've been doing it for so long that we don't consciously think about how we pick it up, how we hold that knife, how we hold that fork. The subconscious has stored that information and it helps us, so we can reference that information. So we're basically referencing our subconscious all the time, in good ways and sometimes in bad ways. So some of the information will be coming through as a bit of a negative. So if you think of your subconscious as a bit of a referencing system, and sometimes some of those events will have quite strong feelings and emotions attached to them, which will create triggers for us. And our interpretation of those are what helps us to form our beliefs. Okay, so it becomes almost like a sort of very handy referencing system that we refer to all the time without even thinking about it. You know, we're not even aware that we're doing it. Oops. Oh, my computer's not working. Okay, right. So something that's really important before we sort of look at a slightly more detailed model again of the pyramid model is that beliefs are not facts. Beliefs are opinions. There are our opinions based on the things that have happened to us throughout our lives. And I'm sure you've all been in a situation with somebody who's perhaps very talented, very good at something, and everybody says, but you're really good at this. But they really genuinely do not believe that they are. They can see all the facts in front of them. It's all completely rational. They can see that they've been very successful, but deep inside, they don't believe it. So their belief somewhere along the line has convinced them that they're not good enough, for example. So it's very important to remember that these beliefs that people hold are quite often limiting beliefs. They're good as well sometimes, but these are just opinions, and they are open to interpretation, usually by the person that has them. They're open to change, and from our point of view, they're open to updating. So we can actually help them to change their belief system. But we always work with their belief system to begin with. We don't challenge their beliefs initially. So it's very important to remember that beliefs are basically not facts, they're opinions. Okay, so what tends to happen, just going on a little bit further with the pyramid model, is where we've got all this information coming in, because so much throughout our life, if you think how much information, how many events we experience, how many different emotions we feel about different things happens, we have to, we have to keep just a small amount on the surface, and we have to respond and react according to our belief systems. So what happens is when a certain event happens, we check in with our belief system, and we'll talk a little bit more detail about how those beliefs might not be so great, and when we talk about the library model a little bit later on. So these beliefs that we have, as I said, you can see them there in the middle. Sometimes they're good, but they're a combination of good and bad things that have happened to us, or our perception of good and bad things. Because to one person, they might be really, really horrendous. To somebody else, doesn't have the same effect. Okay, but sometimes these beliefs, they kind of seem to stay there, and they trigger, and they'll attract other experiences of a similar nature. And that's where we start to get into this sort of loop. I don't know if you can see over there, a loop of the same things happening over and over again. And we're not aware of these things. We're not aware of the fact that we keep attracting to perhaps the wrong person and getting the same behavior and creating the same behavior ourselves. Subconsciously, we are creating these patterns for ourselves based on our own deep limiting beliefs about ourselves. So these are some of the things that we might sometimes be trying to actually sort of eliminate or change, update for clients. Okay. Now, what I want you to do, just so that you can really get this into your head, I want you to do a little exercise that I think you'll find. I can put it up here on the screen anyway, but it's actually in your module. But I want you to, in a moment, I'm going to put you into your rooms, and I want you to practice drawing a very simple sketch of the pyramid model based on what I've just talked about, what you've read, I'm sure, in the module as well, and make a bit of a list about what you think are the key aspects of this model, and try to explain it to the person as you're drawing it. So take it in turns to explain it to each other. So I'm going to put you in rooms of 3 each. So basically what I've just talked through, I want you to simplify that and explain it to one other person, or 2 other people it will be, won't it, in the room. Okay, are you all happy with that? There's no right or wrong to this. This is practice. That's all. Okay. So, and it is a really, really useful tool to have when you're trying to explain to a client how you can help them, so they can understand how some of those limiting beliefs they have may have come about, and how you're going to help to solve them. So it's actually quite a good way to explain it. Okay, so I'm going to just take this away for a minute and stop sharing my screen. Give me a second. Put you into rooms. All right, we've got you all back again. Okay, so let's just put you into, I think we did 7 rooms, didn't we, last week? Or was it 6? Let's try 6. Okay, you're all going to disappear in a moment. Have you all got pen and paper nearby? And you can perhaps show them the diagram as you're going through it, and just talk the person or the other people in the room with you through with this. And I'm just going to be wandering around, and so's Heather. Okay. I'll see you all in a minute. Right. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and disappear. Oh, is it just the 2 of us here? Right.
Hello, Kate. All I can do is see you.
Oh, hi.
Where's everyone else?
I don't know.
Oh.
Okay, you can put your sound on for a bit. So how did you all feel about that? I know there was a mix of response. Some people found it really easy. A couple of people found it a little bit confusing. Any comments that anybody can give?
I thought it was nice to hear other people's like phrases of like how they explain it and different words and stuff. It was good to listen to other people.
We were wondering if you ever actually, Debbie, if you personally ever use it with your clients, that model.
I do sometimes. Yeah.
Do you?
Yep, sometimes.
How often?
Oh, it really varies. I might reference it,
Okay.
bits of it. I don't necessarily draw it out for people.
Yeah.
As I said, you don't always have to do that. I think it depends on the client. Some
Okay.
people really want that some sort of explanation. What about you, Heather? Where would you say on that?
My sessions are mostly with Andrew's students.
Oh,
So they're already somewhat down the line, and
Yeah.
the course has kind of triggered something. So I pick up sessions that way. So yeah, I don't kind of have newbies who don't know what we're talking about.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I use it all the time, and I wouldn't worry if it doesn't resonate with you exactly. You don't have to use it. Now, as I said, Heather doesn't use it at all because she doesn't have reason to. I do sometimes if I think it will help.
Okay.
But it's just a simplistic way of helping you talking to each other, even just actually explaining it differently in a very simplistic way is just really a start, but you don't have to use it. You might even use it as a visualization as part of what you're doing. There's all sorts of ways you could reference it if you really wanted to.
I actually used it, I didn't realise I was using it as a team manager to try and teach my team that, you know, if they're doing like calls and things like that, things they've got to learn and training, that they will actually take it in, it goes into their subconscious. So I didn't realise that what I had been doing was this pyramid thing with them, you know, so that they can actually remember how to do things on the phone without having to reference things, you know, and look things up on a computer.
Actually, you could use it with children as well. I would have thought it'd be quite a good thing to do with children. It's quite because it's nice and easy. You're explaining how you could actually help them. It could be quite a good thing to do. But from the point of view of your own understanding, those of you that haven't finished the diploma, because I know there's a few of you that have, it's just a good idea to just practice telling people about it. And you might find each time you do it, something else will come out that you hadn't thought of, or you'll find a better way of explaining it. Just good to practice. And as I said, I know I'm pretty certain it's one of the questions in the modules that you need to find a way of explaining it your own way. So it's good to practice that. But the main reason is for understanding for yourself, really. Okay, so let's just share my screen again. Oh, it's disappeared. Bear with me a second. Brilliant.
Yep, got
There
it.
we go. We're there again. Right, panic over. And screen share. And there we go. Right. Sorry about that. Many apologies for messing up my recording again. Okay, so thank you for doing that. As I said, mixed reactions, but as I said, you don't have to use it. It's just a simple way of looking at things. Now, I want you to do a little exercise for me now, which you'll find it in your books, but it's up on the screen here anyway. This is all together. I just want you to, it's just a sort of an exercise in the information that's coming in without us even realizing it sometimes. So you've got information, as we said, looking at the pyramid model, that is coming and going between the conscious and the subconscious all of the time. And if you can become a bit aware of this, that's going to help you to understand more about what you're doing with your clients. So I just want you to just for a moment, just sit there for about 2 minutes and just have a look around the room where you are. Just allow your gaze to wander, and anything, you know, that your attention falls on, just let your mind rest there for a bit. And just see what you sense going on in the background of your mind. Don't think too hard about anything, literally just let your mind go from wherever it wants to go. Okay, so try and be as relaxed as you can. Notice the objects, maybe identify it. You might have some associations that come with that, but just try to be as relaxed as you can. You don't need to close your, well, you can't close your eyes because you need to look at the objects. But it's very, very, you know, a very subtle thing, just literally 2 minutes. And then after that, I want you to just briefly write down anything that you observed and noticed. Okay, so if you just take a moment to do that now. And I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Okay, about now, if you just take a few minutes to just write down any of those things, okay? So just anything that you observed, noticed, things that you might have been thinking as you were looking at certain objects and things, just make a note of that. Okay, have you just made a note of a few things there? Anything anybody wants to share that they noticed about doing that?
Mine were mostly like memories of people. Like my mind always wandered to things that reminded me of people and like a flashback to a memory of with that person.
Yeah, good memories, bad, mixture?
Yeah, I mean, all of them were good that I looked at.
Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I saw my daughter's Scrabble Scrabble game,
Hmm.
and I looked at it with the dust on it and thought, I'm a terrible mom. I never play board games with my daughter. And then I felt guilty.
Limited beliefs there.
I felt guilty
Oh,
because
no.
I hadn't been playing, you know, games with her. So
That's sad. So something that was quite a usual thing brought about a feeling that wasn't so good. So
yeah. Mhm.
okay, anybody else? Anything in particular that people noticed?
I've looked at the bed and seen my cushion and felt tired and shoulder pain. And then unfortunately, also bad, I've drifted back into the company and thought about the furlough scheme and people, you know, not earning that enough money.
Yeah.
So mine unfortunately went also into the stress level.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Anybody else? Anybody else want to share anything that they got from that? Just looking around the room at just normal objects.
Memories, emotions, feelings.
Yeah.
attached to people usually.
Yeah. So quite a couple of you going to, well, actually most of you to people and experiences, and sadly some of the more negative things, you know, some guilt coming out there, and then some stress, and it just shows what sits beneath the surface, doesn't it, really?
Also to do as well, when you see things and you think that needs to be done, this needs to be fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I did the same
Yeah,
myself.
that's what was happening to me.
Yeah.
My house needs a clean. I need to wash this. Is the baby asleep?
Exactly what I was doing, just noticing dust and general.
I guess it's depending on the room where you sit at, because I'm sitting in a bedroom, so it's just so yeah.
But it shows you, doesn't it, how you're constantly, information is going between the conscious and the subconscious. You're constantly referencing these things. Some of you had some more negative ones, some had some happy ones, and you can see how it can be very mixed up. And how we are constantly doing it without even realizing it. So you go through your day and you're constantly doing that. So just really a demonstration of how that can happen. Okay, so going to move on now and look at the library model. So the library model, some of you may have already looked in the module at something that is another helpful way that you can either use it with your clients or just helping you to really understand what's actually going on when we create issues, if you like, and experiences. And you know, at the end of the day, most of your clients will be coming to see you with what we sometimes refer to as surface issues, which will have been created by other things. The library model itself is actually quite a good thing to use also as a visualization, because it helps people to imagine, you know, that their mind is like this library with all these experiences and all these memories which they can reference. So the idea is, you know, similarly to the pyramid, but slightly, you know, more detailed, is that we're constantly collecting material for our library. So if you think of our mind being like that library, and all the books in there representing the experiences and the memories that we've been through. Now, some of those memories, like some of you just mentioned, some of those ones in the exercise there, were maybe not such great memories. Some of, you know, they'll trigger something else. Somebody was feeling guilty because they hadn't played a game with the daughter or something like that. It had triggered that feeling, that belief that you're not a good enough mum or whatever. So from all these experiences, you start to form beliefs about yourself and about the world that, you know, around you and the people in that world. So you're using this sort of library, if you like, as a reference or a guidance system for how to live and how to think about yourself and how to behave. And your inner librarian is responsible for making sense of that information. And making a judgment. So sometimes the judgment we make isn't always right, and sometimes it can be quite negative. And a lot of that will be based on past experiences or past memories that we will be triggering in that library. So you've got this inner librarian. So if you look at him down there, and I suppose you could think of the librarian, he's almost like he's your mind, isn't he? He's the rational, analytical, trying to work out what to do with everything. But in order for him or her to work out what that really means, what that information that's coming through means, it needs to go go through the security system, our inner security system, which is often referred to as the security monkeys. And for those of you that have read the chimp paradox, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so your monkey brain is very sort of irrational, very emotional, sometimes helpful, but sometimes not helpful at all. So if you think of your security system is really the limbic system, so it's all about emotions, it's all about perhaps sometimes irrational decision, but actually protection overall. And sometimes that part of your mind thinks it's protecting you, but actually it's making you fearful of something you don't need to be fearful of. And then you've got your inner librarian, which is the sort of frontal lobe, which is trying to work it all out. But in order for that information to come through, it has to go through the security monkeys first. Okay, now the combination of the security monkeys and the inner librarian are what create or can create our critical faculty, which is when we can't get those positive things through. So that critical faculty is where, you know, say somebody comes in and said, I just want you to tell me lots of positive things and that everything's going to be okay. You come up against that barrier of the critical faculty, because that's the belief system and the security monkeys and the inner librarian creating that barrier. And we'll talk more about the critical faculty and how to break through that, but that's basically what's happening. So your monkeys are looking for any threat, and what that creates is what we know as the stress response. So very useful at times, mainly designed to help protect us from things we need to be afraid of physiologically, but it tends to end up having a psychological response as well. So that's what, you know, you actually have to go through. So that's the library. Now it's a little bit more of a slightly more detailed version of that. So if you just looking at it again before I sort of move on from this, so you've got at the back of that, you've got the books and all those different experiences, those memories with all sorts of things attached to them, possibly different emotions, positive, negative, and so on, very much like the pyramid model. And those help to form our beliefs, okay? And then you've got the inner librarian there who's desperately trying to work out what to perceive, how to interpret that information, how to interpret these beliefs, but has to work against the security monkeys, who will sometimes be creating that sort of stress response, that often known as the fight-flight response, which again we'll come back to in a moment. Oops. Oh, right, okay, so here's again looking at that library and just looking at how all that's created. So you've got that information coming in. So information may be good, bad, whatever it is, it's coming in, it's going into the reception, meeting with the inner librarian, which is that sort of that part of you that's trying to work out what to do with it. This is all done subconsciously, you're not even aware it's happening. But sometimes that gets triggered by the security system, which is sometimes surface level symptoms. We
Was it?
It can be anxiety or
Oh, this morning I let the girls in.
and you've got those beliefs there, those beliefs about yourself, about the world, which have all been constructed from these memories and your emotions that attach to those, sorry, should I say. So usually when you're working with a client, they are presenting issues which are surface level sort of symptoms that we are then trying to find out how did they actually come about, and helping them to sort of get past that, if you like. Okay, so that's the library model. Now I would ask you to do a similar exercise on that, but I think we might be slightly short on time, so we'll leave that for now. But that's something I'd recommend, the actual library system, to try and explain that to other people. You can do it to each other outside of this, you can do it to anybody you know that will actually listen and is interested in what you're doing, just to explain that library system, to try and get that idea across of how that happens. Now, what we're actually going to move on to look at in just a moment is this security system, which can create so many surface level symptoms, because it's what we need to bypass at times. And sometimes it's creating those symptoms that just don't need to be there. As I said, the security system can be a good thing. It can be a very helpful thing, but quite often it isn't. So let's, I'm just going to bypass this particular bit so that we can just get on to the next bit. Now, this is the stress, often referred to as the stress response, the F response, fight, flight. I'm sure all of you have kind of come across that at some point. And it's where basically our mind perceives any kind of threat. It's like a sort of an internal sort of security stroke survival system, okay? And it kicks in to help us deal with it, even sometimes when it doesn't need to. It's like the monkeys are very nervous, okay? So think of your monkeys as your sort of the stress response. They perceive what they think is danger, and they send an alarm signal out to the amygdala. The amygdala being the part of your brain that sort of triggers the fight flight response, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about in the moment. So you hear a fight flight is what most people have heard of. So basically, if you fight, challenge, you fight it. It might be anger that comes out under something like that, but you're facing it, but you're challenging it. So you might find certain situations will trigger that might make you really angry, and you don't know why. Every time that particular type of situation or feeling comes up, it makes you really angry. Flight is you'll run away from it. And that could be something, even something like just avoiding something, you know, running away. You don't want to do it because you're scared. You've got that trigger coming up for that. Freeze is where you just rabbit in the headlights. You stand still, and it's almost like if you were actually being chased by a bear right now, you would just stand there and hope it doesn't see you. You wouldn't attempt to fight or run away. You would just freeze. Another form of freeze, I don't know if any of you can think what might be a really good version in modern life that might come into the category of freeze. Anybody got any ideas?
Freeze comes into real life anyway, and victims don't understand it. They don't understand why they've frozen.
Yeah, absolutely. But can you think of a situation, something that you might do?
Procrastination.
Procrastination, yes, a really good one for it.
Avoidance as well.
Avoidance, yeah, which is procrastination, actually.
Yep.
And procrastination by any other name is fear, isn't it? It's fear of, you know, so you just freeze, you don't do it. You know you've got to do it, but you go into fight flight, you go into the stress response and you freeze. So procrastination is a really big one, and I'm sure we all suffer from that at times. And it's one you'll come across a lot, particularly when people are very overwhelmed. You know, they're very stressed, they're overwhelmed, lots of things going on in their world, and they freeze. Or it could be even something that you're scared of doing. So you hear of people with performance nerves. They know what to do, the body knows what to do, you know, they've done it so many times before, but they go into freeze mode and they just can't remember anything. It's just like their mind just blanks out. Happened to me once in a piano exam. It's not nice. So that's freeze. Fawn, you don't hear so much about that one, but basically you become subordinate to the situation or the people that you're dealing with. And feign or faint is you just, again, play dead and hope it goes away. It's almost a bit like freeze, really. So quite similar in that response. So the fight flight response is what the monkeys are creating, okay? Now, I've got a diagram that I hope will kind of help exactly what is happening to your body when you go into that mode. Some of you will already know this because you will have had that background. So apologies if I'm saying anything that is already very obvious to you. But basically, when we perceive a threat, even if it's not a physical threat, the sympathetic nervous system triggers a sort of basically a biological response, which gets the body ready to run, in effect, ready to deal with that situation. And that quite often will mean the production of extra adrenaline, extra cortisol. So somebody who's in a constant state of stress or anxiety, where they're constantly doing this all the time, naturally they're exhausted. You know, and it creates all sorts of surface level symptoms like insomnia, they can't concentrate, fuzziness, depression at its worst, anxiety, because constantly their body is in a state where it is just getting ready to run away from the perceived threat. Now, obviously, it was designed to help us, that part of us, and generally it would have been more in the old sort of brain, if you like, to run away from bears or saber-toothed tigers or whatever you wanted to think about. Or in a modern situation, it might be, we're too close to a car, so our body gets us out of the way. So it can obviously work on a physiological level as well. But more commonly, the sort of things that people will come to you about will be the psychological effects of the stress response, which is creating a sort of whole range of problems. So I've got a little diagram here just to kind of show you what's actually happening when you go into that mode. So your perceived threat, and I say perceived threat because the monkeys have decided this is something that you need to be stressed about, or you need to run away from in some way, or freeze, or whatever it is, whichever part of that you decide or your body decides you're going to do. So your senses, and that could be any of the senses, it might be something you see, feel, hear, whatever, sends sort of a distress signal of danger to the amygdala, which is blamed for so many things, the amygdala, and creates so many problems. And it sends that distress signal almost like a Morse code to the hypothalamus, which is, you could be considering this a bit like a control center. So that the hypothalamus is this control center for the body, and that is responsible for sending signals to the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system, which is made up of two parts, okay? So in the situation of the stress response, so you are responding to that, just drop my pen, the autonomic nervous system will then activate the sympathetic nervous system, okay? Which will really get your body ready to run, in effect. So you will produce more cortisol, more adrenaline, and it acts like an accelerator. Okay, so naturally, if you're constantly going through this, you're going to feel very, very tired. And it makes these physiological changes take place in your body so that you're ready to respond. Okay, so the idea behind it is good, but unfortunately, in modern society, we quite often find we're in this stage because we're not running from bears most of the time anyway. We are actually responding to that stress response. And it's then when the perceived threat has gone or feels like it's gone, the parasympathetic nervous system then kicks in and acts like a brake. And that's when your body will return to normal. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is what people that are involved in mindfulness, relaxation, and all the rest of it are trying to stimulate, to calm you down, okay, to actually get the body to return to normal. I don't know how many of you saw Andrew's breathing seminar or webinar, which was really useful. I've been trying my nasal breathing, and it really works. It's great.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. If any of you haven't watched it, I do recommend watching the webinar. It's very, very useful stuff. But that all helps to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, nasal breathing, sort of belly breathing, and so on. So that's basically what happens when the stress response actually occurs. And that is what's occurring with somebody who might come to you with some of these surface symptoms that are creating these feelings that they're getting. Obviously, there's probably more beneath the surface, and that's another thing that we will get to at some point, which will help you to resolve that. Just a few words about the amygdala. As I said, I'm sure quite a lot of you have heard about the amygdala. Anybody that's involved in mindfulness, relaxation, will all know that this is definitely the enemy. The amygdala triggers, it's part of the limbic system, and it triggers these negative stress responses and helps to create it really on a psychological level. And the thing is that your brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So like, you can have a real threat, which might literally be pulling somebody away from the front of a car, or walking away from something, or running away from something. An imagined threat or danger might be much more psychological, and it could be as simple as something like, you know, a small child at school that's told they're stupid and feels they're not good enough anymore, so they have that response. So that would be imagined, but actually still very real to the person, and the brain doesn't know the difference. So generally, when we're working with clients, you're paying attention to the client's response to the situation, okay, more than the situation itself. It isn't, the situation isn't, you know, we could look at that and say, well, the teacher said you're stupid, and one person might say, no, I'm not. Somebody else might think, oh, I definitely am. I must be stupid then. It's their response that is important. And that's what that will actually reveal to you what they believe about themselves. And that's then what you're going to be working with. So it's a really, really important thing to remember. Okay, any questions about the stress response? No? Okay, I'd imagine it's something that a lot of you will have come across at some point. Anyway, you know, it's something that we do hear talked about quite a lot. Just want you to take a few minutes just to take a few notes down on this. Oops, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Just take a moment to just make a note of any example you can think of each of these, the fight, flight, freeze, feign and fawn that we just talked about. Okay, so just take a few minutes just to take a note of those now. Okay, and after you've done that, if you can just do, just make a note again of any real physical threats that you can think of, either modern or something that could be something that we wouldn't necessarily come across now so much. And what would be either an imagined stroke psychological threat, perhaps one or two if you can, just make a note of those. Okay, so anybody want to share any for fight? I know we had one earlier on anger, but anything else that you can think of for fight?
Aggression.
Sorry, what was that?
Aggression.
Aggression, yeah, yes, yeah.
Arguing with your boss,
yeah,
for example.
Mm-hmm.
When you're physically attacked and your reflex is to slap the person or hit back when you don't actually intend to do it, but it's because there's been a physical attack on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true, isn't it? Some people will more immediately physically react than others. So, and that's likely to be because of something that's happened at some point that's triggered that. Okay, what about flight?
Hiding.
Sorry, hiding.
Hiding, yeah.
Hiding, yeah.
Hiding.
Running away.
Running away, yeah.
Yeah.
But anxiety kind of come like, well, obviously they all come with that anxiety, but in the sense of, you know, having an imagined, like imagine that someone's following you because
yeah,
like you know.
I mean, in general, people that have anxiety will generally fall into one of these categories, if not many of them. So yeah, that definitely. So it's a kind
paranoia.
Of running away from things because and running away, it's almost a bit like the avoidance thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So okay, freeze.
Self-sabotage as well, possibly for flight.
Yes.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Any others for flight before I move on to freeze? No?
Yeah, maybe if you've got to do a presentation at work, you might take the day off because you're not feeling very well.
Yeah, that's a really good example, actually. Yeah, so it is kind of a, it is that, I mean, I can remember a situation many years ago, being in a situation where we had to write a poem or something in front of everybody and then announce it. And I was going to go to the loo and not come back. So I guess that was flight. I didn't want to do that, but I was held there. So I had to do it. Okay, freeze.
Of being in shock.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a kind of rabbit in the headlights, just not being able to literally freeze, not being able to move.
Not making decisions.
Not making decisions. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll find a lot of people will come to you, and a phrase that will come out a lot will be, "I'm just stuck." And it's literally they've come to a point where they freeze because they don't know which way to go. They can't make a decision. They're stuck. And it could be other reasons as well. So I think, yeah, that's a good one. Freeze, any others?
You can physically freeze when there's an attack that's too shocking for you to comprehend, or that you actually can't physically get away from.
Yeah.
So then you shut down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being like, for example, if you're in an exam, you know, when you just can't remember anything, and you know they put the exam paper down, your head goes blank.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, that would be the same. Yeah, freeze, definitely. Okay, and what about feign? Not one we hear so much.
It's where you just go along with things just for to keep the peace.
Yeah.
Agreeing, yeah.
So you kind of just buckle down and get on with it. Yeah. Any other examples you can think of that where that would happen?
With a boss.
Yeah. So even though you're not very happy about something, you're just kind of doing it.
Pretending that everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that in itself will eventually create symptoms of a different sort, won't it? Okay. And I mean, obviously in a physical way, just basically just hoping it doesn't happen, just not reacting, you know. So somebody that buries their head in the sand, for example, somebody that you know, just doesn't want to face up to stuff.
Ignorance.
It kind of be that. Yeah.
That'd be lack of boundaries as well.
Lack of boundaries, yeah. In what way? Can you give me an example?
Just if you're kind of going along with something all the time and you just don't really know where your boundaries are and what to say yes and no to.
So you're kind of putting up with stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Like people pleasing, or
yeah. No, that would be a good example as well. Yeah, and it happens more than you would think as well. Okay, and then the final one, sort of faint. Basically just hoping it goes away. It's a little bit like head in the sand. There's a crossover, isn't there, I think, with some of these.
Yeah.
Anybody else think of any other examples around that?
Physically fainting to escape because of the emotional experiences the person's having.
What, like Victorian women?
Like children.
Children.
No, children and teenagers fainting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about
that hysteria type of thing?
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah.
Or becoming chronically ill.
Yes. Yes. So having an illness sort of to kind of almost cover it, where people get, well, they don't think they get ill on purpose, but it can become a sort of a physical symptom.
Could it be like weak and like shaking legs? You know, sort of like wobbly.
Yeah, I guess it could do. But again, that's almost like it's. I think some of these do cross, don't they? I feel it could almost be because you can't.
Diversion tactics.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of these diversion tactics are not necessarily, you know, like as I say, they're not deliberate. They just happen. It's a subconscious thing, and it's a reaction. Okay, and what about, so moving on to the different examples of real and imagined. So real physical threats, examples of that.
Or like a fight.
Yeah. Okay.
it could be a lot of things, fights, car accidents, probably quite serious stuff, losing your job, losing your house.
Yeah.
Family relationship loss.
Some of those are, yeah, I guess I suppose they are family relationship and house loss, that sort of thing. That's quite physical, isn't it? It's also very psychological.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, as I say, car accidents, getting out of the way of something, being chased, all of those things are physical threats. What about the sort of the psychological threats, perceived psychological?
Phobias. So like small animals like spiders, they don't do much, but you are fearing them.
Yes, yeah.
So that's a psychological thing.
Psychological, yeah. And quite often they're indicative of something else, nothing to do with
Yeah.
them, actually. So,
like perceptions of relationships.
yes.
You can often perceive a conversation going very badly when in fact the other person sees that it went quite well.
Yeah. So what sort of reason would you have for feeling like that?
That's paranoia, isn't it?
Could be
paranoia.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Any sort of like stress and worry, about maybe if you've asked a boss for a raise and they've kind of been quite, flatlined with the way that they've responded. So you've taken it away quite negatively, but then they've come back to you maybe days later and you've realized that you were worried about nothing.
So it's an anxious response, isn't it? It's like, what if?
It's the dentist, I think, You don't want to go.
But unfortunately, our body, whether it's a physical threat or a psychological threat, it responds in the same way because the brain doesn't know the difference and it will trigger. So, some good examples there from everybody of some of the things that might create those. Okay, now what time are we now? Right, just wanting to move. This is just another part of the stress response, but looking at, whoops, we'll come back to it. Sorry, doing great with this tonight, aren't I? Here we go. Okay. Something called the general adaptive syndrome, which is sort of almost like an ongoing stress response. So back in 1950, a doctor and a researcher, somebody called Hans Sale, I think you say his name, produced an article which was about stress and the general adaptive syndrome, and he actually suggests that the stress response is actually divided into 3 bits. So you've got that alarm stage, which we've just been talking about. So that's your fight, flight, your initial reaction. So that might be a real sort of physical situation, or it might be a psychological response, like, the fight, flight, freeze, feign, and so on. So that's when it actually happens. But he then says it goes to the next stage, which is the resistance stage. So that's when the stress actually carries on. So where normally the parasympathetic nervous system would calm the system down and take it back to normal, in actual fact, it doesn't completely. You sort of retain some of those elements of the stress response. So in what actually happens over the time is that the individual learns to adapt to feeling that way. Okay, so feeling stressed, and it becomes normal. I'm sure you've all heard people say, oh, I'm just an anxious person, or I've just got OCD. It's almost like they accept that's part of their makeup. So it becomes something that they essentially live with. So they're still possibly producing some of the stress hormones, things like cortisol and adrenaline. And I'm sure probably a lot of you know that cortisol is associated with weight gain, which can quite often be linked with stress, depression, and all of those different things. So in that sort of situation, they are living with that sort of stress response that's not at its high level, but it's just kind of always there. It's always there. And the body therefore is on sort of high alert. And the stress chemicals continuing to be released. So not a very good place to be. The sort of signs you might get could be sometimes fuzziness, can't concentrate, can't focus. It could be a varying range of sort of fairly minor surface level symptoms, could be even anxiety, mild depression. And you might find sometimes a client will approach you at that level with some sort of surface level symptom relating to that stage. The exhaustion stage is when it's really got to the point where it's taking over their life. So it's just becoming too much to bear. They're perhaps having severe depression, high anxiety, you know, to the point where it's stopping them living their life in a normal way. So somebody who had a severe phobia of small spaces suddenly just cannot get in a lift anymore. They can't go on a train, and then suddenly they can't go to places. So their life is being completely turned upside down because of the fact that this particular thing is just taking over. And at that point, again, that might be when you get a client actually come to see you with a surface level symptom of that, you know, one of those things. There could be many different things. So this is called the GAS syndrome, so general adaptive syndrome, GAS for short. And that, as I said, that's where people have just got to the point where they either are suffering with some of the symptoms, or they've got very severe symptoms which they really need help with, and they need to get to the bottom of why they're behaving in that way. Okay, and in actual fact, most of the people that you will sort of have come to see you will be displaying some sort of symptoms which they may not know that there's anything beneath that. They just know they have this symptom, or some limiting behavior that's stopping them doing things, stopping them being who they want to be. And it's actually as a response to actually suffering from these adaptive responses. And that is initially a reaction to the stress response. Okay. So what we would be aiming to do then is to help them to stop responding in that way, and change their behavior, really. So that's basically what we're trying to do. So that's the GAS response. Okay. So is there any questions about that at all? Any questions at this point? No? Okay. Right, I'm just going to, we haven't got very much time left, but I want to finish off and get you to do a similar exercise to what we did a moment ago. But this time, I'd just like you to close your eyes. So let's just get rid of this for a moment. And, okay, so I can just see you all. Okay. Now this is an exercise in emotional awareness that's slightly different than the last one. Okay. So as you already know, we know that we've got information going in and out, good bits, bad bits, all the rest of it. A lot of the people that reported back some of the things they thought of related back to people, negative and positive, all sorts of different things going on there. But this time I specifically want you to actually think about people. Okay, so just close your eyes for a moment. Just be as relaxed as you can. Okay. And I just want you to just let your mind wander for a moment to any person that comes into your mind at all. Doesn't matter who that person is, it's the first person that comes into your mind. And I just want you to think and just allow whatever comes to come. So any feelings, any associations that you have with that person. Just let whatever comes come. No pressure. You don't have to think hard about it. But just any associations, any thoughts, and any feelings that you have about that particular person. And just stay with that for a moment. Just letting those ideas flow through. Okay, just sit there in silence just for a moment, just letting anything that comes into your mind in relation to that person, positive, negative, anything at all. Just letting that come. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes. Okay. So we'd just like to open your eyes. Okay. So I'm just going to go around you all, if that's okay, one by one. Just tell me a little bit about, I mean, obviously I won't know these people, so it doesn't matter. Just tell me, first of all, who you thought of, who they were to you or are to you, and what came up, really. So if I start with Yaz.
I was thinking about my mum.
Yeah.
And I obviously, like, I miss her a lot. I love her a lot because opposite sides of the world. I carry a lot of like worry and frustration with her as well. Like, we've had, you know, tough times over the years, but I currently like worry that she's kind of doing nothing with her life at the moment. And I know that she's really talented, which is really frustrating for me. Yeah, just a lot of like really positive, you know, loving memories, but tied with this frustration. And yeah,
There's some really lovely positive things there, but some obviously some worries and concerns, and quite stressed really about worrying about your mum.
Yeah.
If you had to choose one word that comes into mind when you think of that your mum, what would that be?
Longing, I think, was a word that kept coming around and around. Just, yeah, we're very, very close, like personality wise as well.
Yeah.
So I think we clashed a bit, but you know, it's been a long time since I've lived in Australia. So yeah.
Okay, so sort of kind of bittersweet, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Longing was the word that really came to mind. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you for that. Yes. Okay, Barbara, who did you think?
I might have one of those days. So I thought about my manager. She's a director. She has got a small company, and we weren't really in good terms since the lockdown brought a breakthrough. Yeah. So she was talking about hypnotherapy with a client from hers today on the phone, and said, I've got a lady who's doing this, and I refer you to meditation online and stuff like this. So I felt like she taught me a lot, because I always thought managers are not nice. I've worked for a big corporation. I haven't been treated very well. I've been bullied in Germany. Yeah. So I've got a lot of baggage there, and I thought managers are never nice, they're never understanding. Yeah. And I had to relearn, and today that was such an aha moment, because I thought she's never going to accept me being a pagan, being a therapist, wanting to do something else. She knows about what I'm doing. Yeah. So it's like a transition period, and she seems to become the person who changes her beliefs. Yeah. In managerial aspects, because I see that she's struggling with the furlough system and being fair to people, but then you've got the accounts ways. Yeah. So you've got that, you've got the facts, and then you've got the person, and I can see the struggle there as well, which I thought, you know, yeah.
What word would you know, if you had to choose one word to say what really comes up when you think about your manager, what comes up for you?
Teacher.
Yeah, okay. That's really nice. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Kate, what about you? Who did you think about?
So I was thinking about Peter, my partner, right. And I could see him in my mind's eye, and I was kind of looking him up and down. And then this is really bad. I was thinking, God, he does my head in sometimes. And then I just sort of sat there, and I was just with that feeling for a minute. And then I was just feeling my heart, you know, and it was just feeling all like fuzzy and stuff. So I do love him. But yeah, and I was just feeling that and embracing that feeling then. So, and that was it.
What's the one word then? What comes up for him ultimately? The word that really comes to mind for him?
I think love, because that's what I was just feeling it after I thought he does my head in.
That's really nice. So it's quite a combination. Thank you, Kate. What about you? Rue?
Wait.
Oh, I can't. Hello? Oh, she can't hear
Sorry,
me.
my teenager's got very loud music on, so I don't know if you can hear it through.
All right, is it good? Okay.
You
So
probably
what about you,
can't, but
Drew?
it's a little distracting. Yeah, no, I was thinking about, I couldn't stick on one person actually. It kept morphing into other people, which was a bit weird.
Yeah. What was it? What was the overwhelming sort of feeling, do you think, about that? 'Cause you were moving around.
Confused loss.
Confused loss.
Mm.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
Because people that you've lost through death are lost.
Yeah.
And you don't always understand it. And people that are still alive that you vaguely may have lost too, but not through death, are, yeah, I was just on that sort of, it was a sort of ricocheting between the two, really.
It's interesting where your mind goes, doesn't it, when you give them 2 minutes to just think.
Well, there's some well-worn paths, aren't there?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Roo. Leanne. Leanne?
Debbie,
That's okay.
yeah, so
Who did you think of?
so I was thinking about a work colleague who I don't particularly like because her values completely clash with mine, and her behaviour isn't in keeping with what I want to be around on a daily basis. So I find myself going into work and really having to grit my teeth, but which can be quite difficult. So yeah.
So what's the word you would think of if you think of her? So obviously not great.
Well, I don't think I can say it on an open forum like this. Not particularly complimentary, let's say that, Debbie.
Okay, so nothing positive came to mind there.
Not really, no.
Okay, so that's obviously in the back of your mind somewhere, something bothering you. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. B. B? Oh, she's oh, we can't hear you very well, B.
I was thinking about my 3-year-old.
And for some reason, you sound like a robot.
And I'm. Can you not hear me?
No. Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh no.
I can hear you now. Yeah. Sorry, B.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about my 3-year-old daughter and how much she makes me laugh, and how lovely a couple. Oh, no. Can you hear me?
Just about, you going in and out, actually.
Day.
You're talking about your lovely daughter and how she makes you happy? Is that about your lovely how she happy?
Yeah. How funny she is. She's very, very funny, makes me laugh a lot. But also she's very frustrating, and Elia wouldn't put her pajamas on after the bath, and that drives me mad.
If you had to choose one word,
yeah, makes me
choose
also
one word.
frustrated.
What would it be if you had to choose one word for her? What comes to mind when you think of her?
Oh, probably happy, frustrated. Go for both.
Okay, thanks, B. Siri, what about you?
At first I couldn't concentrate on one person, so I flashed like between, say, 4 people, or from one person to the next until I got to about 4. And then I started thinking about someone who passed on 2 years ago. And so I was just having flashbacks of memories throughout my life with that person.
And who was that?
Kind of my stepfather.
Right. Okay. And what's the word you associate with him? What comes to mind when you?
Well, I can't answer that, but in the flashbacks, the word that came to mind was Babs, and it was only when he passed on that I learnt why he called me that. So his best friend was Indian, and apparently Babs is baby. So he used to call me Babs, and I didn't know that. I used to think, why does he call me Babs?
Oh, so that's quite nice then, really.
Very.
Okay, thanks for that, Siri. Phoebe. Phoebe?
Yeah. Hi.
What did you think of?
Yeah, so one of my close friends came to mind. So obviously earlier today we were talking about memories and things, so those were kind of floating through my head, just different happy memories. But also actually, like, a twinge of anxiety as well, because I had seen her pop up on my phone, and sometimes I feel like I have to reply to people quite quickly, and there's sort of like that anxious kind of response that I have. So just a bit of anxiety along with that, I guess. Yeah.
So is that the word that comes to mind, anxiety, when you think about?
I mean, mostly happiness, but then also like a twinge of anxiety, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting, everybody having that mix, isn't it? Lots of mixed bag of what's coming up with everybody. Okay, Sophie, I'm missing you out, Heather, if that's all right. Sophie.
Hi. My mind was kind of flitting from person to person as well. But first of all, I was also thinking about my mother, who I haven't seen, well, probably like lots of people, for a couple of years now. And kind of going on from what we were talking about, the gas response, my feelings were a frustration towards her and kind of angry with her, wondering why she won't help herself, and sort of feelings like that. And then I flitted to my baby because I could hear him crying upstairs.
That's understandable.
So I was thinking, oh no, why is he crying? I should, well, he's not a baby, he's 2, but I was thinking I should be in bed with him because we co-sleep.
Oh, so guilt. No, you can't have that.
And yeah, and then flitted to my husband, thinking a bit annoyed, thinking, why is he making him cry? And then obviously feelings of love for both of them as well. So yeah, my mind was kind of all over the place a little bit.
It's amazing how much you can think in such a short time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how many different types of emotions and feelings are coming through. Okay, thank you for that, Sophie. Angie, who did you think of?
I thought of one of my daughters.
Yeah.
It was because it was just after you mentioned anxiety, and she suffers from bad anxiety attacks. So I remember talking to her at the weekend, because she's at university, about how I was going to be doing this, and maybe I might find something to help her. And then I uni to do film production at Salford. Because of COVID, she's just stuck in a room. She's not getting a chance to have that experience. So I felt a bit sorry for her. And then I thought about how she'll be coming home for Easter, and I miss her, and I'm looking forward to seeing her come home. So that's pretty much it.
There's worry there, there's happiness, looking forward to, lots of different things. Any one word that comes to mind when you think of her?
Just she's lovely. I just call her lovely.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, thank you, Angie. So Paula, what about you?
Mine was my mum. It was my dad's passing a few days ago, so they've been on my mind anyway. Mum died 8 years ago, but we had a really not very nice relationship. So it was just peaceful thoughts about her, saying, you know, even though I didn't like you, I love you, this, that, and the other. I let you go. And then the maddest thing is, I passed an exam today, and she wasn't very supportive. So it was like on the back end of that, it was like, well, you passed the exam with 96% today, you've done it.
Well done.
You know, thank you. So, but it was the overwhelming feeling of release, empowerment, and liberation.
That's great, really positive. Really nice. So although there was some negatives in there associated to that leads to such positive feelings. That's really, really great. Okay.
Well, I've been doing some work on that, so yeah.
Yeah, well, it's working clearly. So that's really good. Thank you, Paula. Jessica, how about you?
Okay, well, I was thinking about my brother, because we met up in the garden. My mum phoned me to say that he was coming round, you know, what was supposed to be on Sunday, but he didn't come, so he was supposed to come round to her house. And would I go so that I could bring my daughter, because she could play with the cousins, you know, which she hasn't seen, even though they live 5 minutes away. And I said I didn't want to go to my mum, because I know that every time I see my brother, he's, you know, he's always criticizing everything and being negative, and I'm kind of trying not to bring negative energy into my space at the minute.
Yeah.
And then my dad phoned up and said, oh, you know, that's not fair on your daughter, you know, she needs to see people because she's obviously, well, she's a single, she's an only child, and she hasn't been seeing anyone because of lockdown. So anyway, I ended up going, and the minute I walked in, that was it. He was just, I could feel the end. I could actually feel this toxic energy floating about, and he was just everything. He was criticizing everything and everyone, and you know, going on about the social distancing, and you know, just everything was wrong. The food, it wasn't healthy enough for his kids, and he was looking at the back of all the bottles. Oh, there's, you know, too many additives in this, and my mum had gone to so much trouble to, you know, prepare some food. And
so anyway,
so
very negative feelings then.
Yeah, so I got home and I almost wanted to cry, and I said to, well, my mum phoned me this morning and apologized, and I just said to her, I said, look, you know, I've been trying to work on putting up boundaries, and I didn't hold that boundary up, and it was a lesson to learn to myself. That you know,
that feeling, the fact that you weren't able to get those put the boundaries up that you wanted to, what feelings that left you with?
More determination to you know, and then, you know, if I can think of a word to sum him up, it's just critical.
Yeah.
Critical and, well, angry. He's just obviously, and you know, that whole thing about, I'm not going to give my, even though I'm thinking about, this is the thing, I don't, you know, that whole thing about you know, giving your power away to people, like if you're resentful, whatever, like I don't want to give my energy away to him, but I still am, you know, just even talking about him now.
No, I understand. It looks like it's had, I'm just saying goodbye to Angie there because I think she's got to go. I think it's slightly running over time.
But anyway, so that was my
but it sounds like bittersweet again, very, you know, sort of some negative stuff, but actually you feel quite empowered, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Really, really good. So good feelings there. Okay, we're nearly got a few more to go. Louise, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm here.
So where were your thoughts? Where were you going?
Well, started with my sister, and then went on to some friends, and I kind of realised that I have so many people in my life that are hard work, so they are quite draining.
So how did that make you feel when you think about the whole thing? So they're draining, and
well, I'm distancing myself from these people now, Sam, and I'm not putting up with all the rubbish. And it's like, I've already told my sister, she's furloughed at the moment, so she's bored. And of course I'm getting all the attention. I don't like a lot of attention. I'm quite happy on my own, Sam, but it's not getting through.
Yeah.
And I don't want phoned every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that can be quite stressful for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm then on edge every time I answer the phone to her to say, you know, what is it now? What's wrong with me, you know? Can I dear? So it is now, and that then kind of starts an argument, which I think she's actually looking for, and I'm rising to that.
Yeah. So what's the word that comes to mind when you think about the fact that you're trying to push these people away because you're finding they're not right for your life at the moment, but that you're not quite succeeding? What's the feeling around that? Frustration, yeah. So that's the overwhelming thing. I'm sorry, that's a negative one for you, but thank you for that. Obviously trying to do a positive thing there for yourself. But
well, it'll change into a positive, don't worry. It'll change.
It will.
It will.
Thank you, Louise. Claire.
I thought about my sister, who I've spent the last lockdown with. And we were never close. We never really got to know one another until about a couple of years ago, when my mother died and we had to look after my father. and who had physical problems, but unbeknown to us, he had Lewy body dementia. So he went quite mad, and it wasn't recognized for a very, very long time. So we were under an awful lot of strain, and we'd never ever been close. We had quite difficult childhood, and we were never allowed to be friends when we were children. And this last lockdown, we've actually been in our parents' home. She's been working as an ITU nurse, and I've been sort of doing the cooking and giving her massages because she gets a bad back, and we just become really, really close. So
that's lovely. That's really nice.
Really, 60 years on, I've actually got a sister, and got to know her, and yeah, really lovely.
So
really
what's the overwhelming feeling about that? So I mean, it's a sad story, but also with a kind of happy ending, really, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, sort of, yeah, you wouldn't think that when your parents die, you get this gift. Which has been absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really lovely. Thank you for that, Claire. Okay, Louis.
Hi.
Now, where did your mind go? Who did your mind go to?
Well, my brother actually, he is currently, his family are currently in New York visiting the grandparents and so on and so forth. So his wife is away, and speaking to him at the weekend, he's quite lonely because of COVID, you know, and not having young children around, you know, it impacts him. So yeah, so I just felt kind of, you know, this whole feeling like I feel sorry for him at the moment that he's alone, but that whole thing that we're coming out of this lockdown and there's better time ahead where we can spend time with family and so on, and I think it was just for me the real thing was just keeping the contact and making sure that I'm present, you know, sending him a message saying, hi, how are you doing? You know, often you forget about that type of thing, but it can have a massive impact.
Yeah. So I mean, when you think about your brother, what's the overwhelming feeling you've got about that? Because obviously you're concerned about him, but you're really looking forward to seeing him and
yeah, he's a great friend.
Yeah.
So I miss not seeing him, you know, and not being around him, you know. We'd go to football matches and whatever, so that not doing any of those things. Yeah,
it's kind of a looking forward to, so really
definitely.
Okay, thanks, Louis. And Celia, finally, I'm sorry, I apologize, we're all running a bit late, but we're nearly done. So
I'll be quick and easy anyway.
Celia.
No, I just thought of a friend who I'm meeting tomorrow for a walk, which I'm looking forward to. And then my mind just spiraled back to how long I've known her and all the stuff we've kind of done. So I just went on a trip down memory lane backwards. And I guess the feeling I've got is just feeling really comfortable around her. So that felt really nice.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. Thank you for that. Thank you all of you for that. I mean, actually, I think the exercise is just to see, isn't it? Just amazing where our mind leads us. And, you know, just you start with one thing and you go backwards and forwards from good to bad to positive. And, you know, really, really nice. And also very nice to hear a little bit and get to know you all a bit more, actually, just from some of the things that you said, which was really nice. So thank you for that. So I'm going to have to sum up now because obviously we're just about to finish. So sorry, I kept you a little bit later. Just to remind you, there's practice tomorrow evening and we're going to be doing more inductions, different types this time. So you might want to have a look at module and see some of those other ones and sort of pick out which ones you might like to do. If you've got any of your own that you want to bring, you're very welcome to do that as well. It's really to just try out different approaches and work with each other. So that's mainly what we're going to be doing. Certainly tomorrow night, and Heather the same, I think, on Friday. And again, always plenty of time for questions and interactions as we go through. Next week, we're going to finish off module 1. We're going to do the last part, and we're going to look at different therapeutic approaches that we're dipping into as part of the course, different types of hypnotherapy. So we're going to be looking at solution-based and mainly focusing on that. We will go into the other stuff as well, which is more the deeper stuff, the analytical, but probably not next week. And also looking at who we can and can't work with. So the contraindications in hypnotherapy next week. So plenty to get through. And as always, please keep using the Facebook group to ask questions. Obviously, there's Heather. You can email me. So if there's anything else we can help you with as you're going, any questions, just let me know. But thank you, and sorry for any technical issues tonight. Okay, and okay, and I hope you're all okay there, Louis. Just joining
Yeah.
me. But anything
Yeah.
you've got to ask, please.
Really good. Just a quick one. Is the link that we use for Zoom the same tomorrow? Or
It's a different one for tomorrow. I think that
Okay.
should be on your email, and Heather will send a different one for Friday. So there'll be 3 links, but they'll always be the same ones. So
Okay.
there'll be one for the Tuesday, one for the Wednesday, and one for the Friday.
Okay.
Debbie, I'm going to be a bit late tomorrow. I don't think I can get here till 8 o'clock. Just you said to pre-warn you, so
Thank you for
I don't know. I don't. If I'm Celia, are you here tomorrow? Because I've got Celia's number. If I'm sort of sitting in the waiting room, I'll let Celia know.
If you could,
That's probably the most useful thing to do.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sometimes I get carried away. Well, I mean, you'll be in your rooms anyway, but just in case I don't see, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, have a nice rest of the evening, and I'm sorry I kept you a bit later.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Wow, quick exit.
Ooh, everybody going?
I know. Sometimes it just zooms down and
Stay there, Heather. Stay there, Heather. Don't go yet.
disappears real quick. See you, Siri.
Okay. Oops.